TIDRadio, a TD-H8. I wanted to love the radio, but I really can't. And I'm going to explain the whole process here in the next 21 or 23 minutes. If all you want is a summary, go to 21 minutes and 26 seconds. It'll get you there. But otherwise, if you really want to see some interesting stuff and some kind of weird stuff, stay tuned. Here it is, the TIDRadio TD-H8. We're just going to call it the H8 for now. But this was sent to me by TIDRadio for the purpose of going through the firmware and seeing if there's any bugs or anything that might be able to be upgraded, fixed, or modified slightly. And while we go ahead and we look through the radio, we're going to kind of talk about what this radio is, give you an overview of it. This is the VHF UHF ham radio bands, or 2 meter 70 centimeter ham radio bands. But this radio is also available in GMRS. Now, full disclosure, when TIDRadio originally sent me this radio and they sent me the first updated firmware, I went to load it onto my computer and my computer detected the firmware was a virus. Now, it was a false positive, but it did take some delay in actually getting this to be tested because I was a little bit concerned. Since then, though, the firmware versions have been okay, and we're just going to take a look at this radio right now. So, to get started, this radio is a dual band, like I mentioned, dual watch, dual display radio, and it's capable of up to 200 memory channels, or 199 if you want to be so precise. This radio also does have the ability to be programmed via Bluetooth, which is kind of cool, as well as on the side of the radio with a standard programming plug. We'll take a look at both of those here in just a moment. Now, this radio is going to be, it says $100 on the TIDRadio website, and I should also mention, though, that on Prime Day, it shows that it's going to be $60, and if you want to take advantage of that, you can click a link below. It's an affiliate link, which means I might get a little bit of profit from that sale. But here we are with the TIDRadio, and before we turn it on, let's take a look at the outside here and talk about a few things. So you have your keypad on the bottom, and you do have what is going to be a colored screen. Now, I did notice that there is a speckle of some kind of dust inside of the screen here, which I think does show up on the camera okay. Other than that, you have a speaker, and we'll get to see how that sounds here in just a second, as well as a microphone, and you have your VFO, your A band, and your B band, and a Bluetooth button. Side of the radio shows a programming cable. Looks like it's, two-prong programming cable, just like you would see on like a baofeng style radio or even like a Kenwood. And then on the other side here, we have our push to talk. We have what I think is going to be our squelch break and maybe the option to change from FM radio, because this does have FM radio capabilities, back to ham bands as well. On the back, we have our battery, and the battery, let's take a look here. It clicks into place, and as we can see here, TIDRadio, it has an FCC ID, and that's the FCC ID for you. Oh, so here I am in editing, and the first thing I just noticed, that was an FCC ID for GMRS radio, which actually kind of got me thinking, like, is this thing really FCC certified? And, you know, one of the things I hate is when people lie. Okay, if it's not FCC certified, just let us know it's not FCC certified, but let's take a look here online and see if we could find an FCC approval ID. I don't think we're going to. And this might be an unpopular opinion, and I'm completely cool with that, but I really don't care what you operate on when it comes to GMRS. This radio isn't certified. It'll still work, right? But the problem then presides is you were still lied to by a company, and I don't like that. And I don't like putting my name on something that was lied to or lies were coming out of. If it's not FCC certified, just say it's not FCC certified. Now, in the sense of the radio being a ham radio, you don't need an FCC ID for amateur radio, provided it meets all the requirements of spectrum purity and so forth, which now we're going to have to test. And you better bet if we were lied to, we're going to look into things a lot deeper. So here we are on the FCC ID search. Let's take a look. Hey, and sorry if you guys hear that guy mowing my lawn, but 2 Alpha Whiskey Lima 3 is the first characters, and then it's Tango Delta Hotel 8 GMRS, or Golf Mike Romeo Sierra. That's what I have in, and if I hit search here, nothing. So let's go ahead and go back real quick, and let's do this. Let's just take out the GMRS and see if that helps anything. Nothing. And let's just go ahead and just get rid of that. Click here, 2 Alpha Whiskey Lima 3. What we're doing is we're in the FCC database, and we're looking up everything. Let me move this over for you here real quick. Fade, boom, there you go. So what we'll do is we're going to sort by final action date, and the most recent final action date that TIDRadio has at all, which is also Quanzhou belong to Electronic Technology Company is back in April, and it was for the 777S, which is like a baofeng copy, right? So according to this, guys, the radio still isn't FCC certified. Now, it's very possible that maybe one day it will be, but I don't like that dishonesty. So, hey, if you don't buy this, that's great. If you do, still great. But I'm still going to continue on and overview this whole thing as I would. And yeah, we'll definitely let TID radios know that we don't trust them. And I'll have more on that at the end because I have some more stuff that is kind of untrustworthy that we want to get to. Anyway, back to this episode. And this is advertised as a 3,000 milliamp hour battery. We'll test that in just a little bit as well. But the radio battery clicks into place or slides into place and locks in. There we go. Now, this also does have a belt clip, which I just happened to install. And the antenna is not a typical antenna. It's a little bit different. So we'll test this out here in a little bit too. But the antenna itself is an SMA female, which means the port on the radio is an SMA male. On the top, it looks like you have an emergency button and a flashlight, as well as a knob to turn off and on your radio, which is pretty smooth. Additionally, this is advertised as a 10-watt radio, and we'll test that here in just a moment. But 10 watts on high power, mid power is 5 watts, and then we have low power at a 0.5 watt. So let's turn on the radio here, and when we turn it on, we get a TID radio logo and a welcome. Now, the screen interface is a little bit different than what you might be used to if you're kind of upgrading rather from like a baofeng UV5R, but it's a digital screen that shows the frequency that you're on top, and then there's a green arrow showing that we're in VFO-A. Now, if we hit B, we'll go to VFO-B. I do believe that if you hold down the A-B, it should scan between the A band and the B band, or the frequencies that you're on. I think that would be a really cool feature. So hold down the A band, B band, and it goes in between here. But I did mention that we have a scan feature, and if you hold down scan, it'll scan on VFO mode in the band you're in. So now you're going to see we're going up 145, 3, 182, 2, and so forth. If I hit exit, it'll stop the scan, and I could do the same thing in the B band as well if I need to. Now, if we were over in the memory mode, we would get there by going from VFO to MR. We just hit MR, and we're in channel mode. Now, I don't have anything programmed in here, but it looks like there's some NOAA weather radio in here already by default. And then just generic 420.050 frequencies for most of the time here. So we're going to program that here in just a moment as well. Now, on the radio itself, we have a couple indicators. Like, for example, right now it shows CH001, which means we're in channel or memory mode. If we go back over to VFO mode, we'll see a VFO here. We see an H, which means we're operating high power. However, if we were on low power, we'd see an L, and then mid power, we'd see an M. And then finally, we have our radio set to wideband mode. I will say that there's a little bit interesting of a thing here. If we go into the menu, which you're going to want to see the menu, there's 41 total items, and I'll scroll through those in just a second, but the down and the up arrow. Now, if I hit down, the numbers go up, and if I hit up, the numbers go down. So these two buttons are backwards, and I'm sure that that'll be an easy fix in the firmware, but I don't think that that should be correct, or at least it's confusing to me. Anyway, as I mentioned here, we have 41 different menu items, and I'll just scroll backwards through them because, yep, I used the wrong option. Of course, feel free to pause anytime now, and you could take a look here. For example, we're going to turn that tail off. And that's that like squelch break at the end almost. And so if we want to turn it off here, we're just going to go there, and we'll hit up or down. You see that, up or down, and then we go to exit, and it turns it off or on. Okay, menu actually saves it. So exit won't save it, but menu will. Again, nothing. Good. Okay, so let's turn that off for real this time. And we're just going to continue to kind of go through here, and we could delete the memory channels. We could add memory channels, and we're going to go through that here in just a second as well. So that should be the menu options for you. Now let's go ahead and actually just program a frequency in here real quick, and then we'll get an idea how this transmits and how it sounds. To program this, the first thing we're going to do is we found a local repeater on repeaterbook.com, and it happens to be the N9HEP repeater here in Northern Illinois. So I just type in VFO mode the frequency, and then I need to change a few other things. I need to change the offset, the tone, and the actual display name. So here we go. We're going to go to menu, and we're going to find our tones. First off, we found offset. So our offset is going to be -6. That's kind of cool. So it's actually not 6 megahertz though. It's -6. So 6000. And then here we hit menu to confirm it, and we'll go here direction. It's going to be negative or minus, and confirm that. Now we just need to find the tones. There we go. So RXCTCSS, we're going to go down here and it should be 107.2. I like that you could type it in. That's kind of cool. And then we got to go to our transmit as well. 107.2. So we're good there. Now we should be able to key up the repeater and at least identify. Whiskey 9, Foxtrot, Foxtrot, Foxtrot. Okay, cool. So I know I'm actually talking to the repeater, and now I want to save this. So let's go back to menu. And there should be a spot in here in the 30s that'll allow us to, there we go, 25, memory channel. We're going to go down here. We're going to set it as memory channel 1. And we confirmed it. Now, can we actually set the menu or the name of the frequency? Let's see here. There's nowhere on here I see that you could change the name, so maybe they could fix that as well, or maybe I missed it. I don't see it. I just went through this a few times and I still don't see it. So anyway, that's that. Now when we go into our memory mode, channel 1 is that repeater. Okay, so that's pretty easy. Programming this is straightforward. Now if you wanted to program more, you just go add more in channel 2, 3, 4, and 5, and so forth. I now have the programming cable plugged into the radio. Radio is still on, and we are going to go over to the programming software. Now, one of the things I will mention about the programming software is you could see how small the section is to put in your frequencies and all your channel information. Unfortunately, if you maximize the screen, it doesn't get any larger. So that's kind of something that hopefully will be worked out, and we'll make that larger here in just a second. But if I hit the COM port, it does show that the COM port's available, so I'm going to click OK. I selected the COM port, and the first thing I want to do is I want to read the radio. So I'm going to read the radio. There's no password, and it's a serial port invalid. Now, this happened to me a couple of times, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit the program and re-enter it. Okay, I did fix it, and the problem is I had to change the COM port and then restart the software and unplug and plug in the USB. So I changed it to COM port 1. Now, it seems like there's a limitation on how many COM ports the software can detect. I tried to set it to COM port 22 and the software would no longer see my COM port. So I set it to COM port 1 in the device manager of Windows. I clicked OK and then it read just fine. So once we're done reading here, you can go ahead and you could save the code plug by hitting, let's see, OK and then close. By going to File and then Save As, and you could save the code plug. As you can see, we have our channel 1 now, which is that repeater we put in earlier, and there's a spot for a name, so we're just going to type in N9HEP, and let's go ahead and add a couple of more. Oops, I almost forgot my CTCSS tones, which on this repeater is 114. There we go. All right, and just for the sake of it, let's put that one at mid-power, and we're going to go ahead and rewrite that one more time. If you have an Android device or you have an iOS device like an Apple, this does have the capability to be Bluetooth programmed via a special app that you could get on the App Store, whatever your App Store is. So let's go ahead and give that a shot. Well, bad news is, OD Master is not compatible with my phone or my version of Android. So this phone isn't going to work. I do have another phone, which I'd rather install this on anyway. Let's see if that one will work. And this is the second phone. It's also a OnePlus phone, just like the other one, but a different version. And this is also not compatible with the version of Oddmaster or OD Master. I think I have an old Android tablet from 2011. Let's give that a shot. Ah, too bad. The Nexus 7 also isn't supported by OD master or odd master. So it's unfortunate because the Bluetooth programming would be really cool if it worked. Later, we'll go ahead and see if we could plug in or use an external headset to activate the Bluetooth, but I don't think we'll be able to. We just found a use for that Nexus tablet anyway. So here we are. We have our power meter into a dummy load. I'm on only one VHF frequency right now, 147.985. And you know what? That was not a simplex frequency. I'm going to make a note of that. That is a repeater input frequency, but I'm in a dummy load, and there's no repeaters within 100 miles using that frequency. I just wanted to point that out so we don't get that comment. And I'm on high power. W9 FFF testing. So 11.45 watts with a fully charged battery. And if we went to menu, we could actually, we're there already, but if we went menu and we have these blue keys here, which are shortcuts, so I can go menu 2, which would bring me here to the power setting, and then I can go down to menu, and I could change that to low or mid. We'll go mid.
Confirm.
This should be 5 watts. W9 FFF testing. And it's 4 watts. And then finally, if we go back to menu here, and we'll go down to low.
Confirm.
W9 FFF testing. So it's about a quarter watt. And so we got a quarter watt on low power, about 4 watts on medium power or mid power, and then 11.5 watts on high power. Okay, so we're going to test UHF here. We're going to start on low, mid, and then high, but I do need to just test a couple of different frequency ranges. Again, I'm in a dummy load.
2, 4, 4, 2, 2, 0, 0, 0.
W9 FFF testing. Now low power, that's about a tenth of a watt, right? What if we went to
4, 4, 6, 0, 7, 5.
simplex frequency? W9 FFF testing. Ooh, yeah. Boy, it was at 6/100ths of a watt, if I'm correct. Damn. Yeah, let's go ahead and check mid power.
Confirm.
W9 FFF testing. 3.74 watts. That's a little more acceptable because it's supposed to be 5, and that watt and a quarter might not make a huge difference. Now let's check high power.
Menu. Confirm.
W9 FFF testing. And I got to say, about 9.72 watts on high power. So in the firmware, they need to fix the low power rating because that's way too low. But that's just something to take into mind there. And let's just see for the sake of it.
2, 2, 0, 1, 0, cancel.
I was thinking maybe we could at least listen to 1.25 meters, but that does not seem to be the case, rather. Okay, on to the next test, which we're going to test the battery. I got to go charge it up fully, which shouldn't take too long. I'll be right back. All right, I tested the battery, and what I did is I charged the battery up fully to make sure that it was at 8.7 volts, and then I discharged it. The first time I ran the battery test, I discharged it to 90% depleted. Okay, so the battery was 90% depleted, and I was discharging at a rate of 3 amps per hour. So basically, after 45 minutes, it died, and it said it was 2,300 milliamp hour battery life. And the watt hours were somewhere around 15.5, I believe. So I decided I wanted to make sure that the test was accurately done. I brought that discharge rate down to 1 amp per hour, or a 3-hour test. And my results are kind of similar, right? 2,500 milliamp hours, still not 20 or 3,000 that's advertised here on this battery. But also the the watt hours went up to 18.310. So just another thing that's not completely accurate. It's close, but it's not completely accurate. Okay, hey, I just want to let you know it's also been a while since I've ran with a spectrum analyzer, and unfortunately for me, it's not like a bike. It's not like you just ride it and you're good to go again. But here's what I did. I had a quarter watt of power coming out of the HT, meaning I was on low power, and I went into an attenuator and then into my Regal DSA 815. Now, my reference level, or my fundamental power level, around 146.55 was negative 23 dBm roughly. And now you'll see a green line. That's 40 dB below the negative 23 dBm or negative 63. A spurious emission should not exceed that green line. And in this case, you'll see 3 marks to the right of my fundamental power. Those are all spurious emissions, and those are all exceeding the green line. So if I did this test correctly, this is why it's not FCC certified. And this is also where I would have the hang up about you transmitting or using this radio for GMRS or for ham radio, because it could be unsafe in certain situations. But if I'm wrong, again, let me know. I'm trying not to be too hard on the radio because human error sometimes occurs. Next, we're going to talk about the transmit audio. And how does that sound? Well, here's what I'll tell you. It's good that TIDRadio is at least acknowledging that, hey, if you test this out, we'll try to do some firmware fixes and upgrades and stuff. TIDRadio, the audio quality on this is good. It's clear, but it's just too low. There's no mic gain setting in the menu. So what you need to do is you need to go in the menu and add a mic gain option to increase the sensitivity of the microphone, because this is how it sounds.
This is W9FFF testing the transmit audio on a TD-H8 TID radio. W9FFF testing the transmit audio and clear.
Hey, and so after I increased it to 12 dB, I did hear that buzz. I suspect that buzz had a lot more to do with these studio lights or these fluorescent and LED lights than it did the radio itself, because on other times when I was listening outside of the house, it sounded okay. Okay, I've hit a point where I think I'm going to stop. It's been 20 minutes of video time. It's been a couple of days now of recording time, and I just don't feel that, I'm not feeling it, to be honest with you. So if you're wondering how this sounds on receive, it sounds fine, I guess. It sounds like any cheap Chinese radio. That's the best way I could put it. At a $100 price point, no. At a $59 price point, at this moment, no. And let me lay out the reasons. And then let me lay out again in recapping some of the things that could be fixed in the firmware. And then we're going to kind of conclude with a little bit of a reason why TID radios is kind of on my nerves. And TID radio, I hope you take this advice and you really understand what I'm trying to say, because a lot of people feel this way too. So number one, let me just start off here. To recap, the radio has some issues that could be fixed with firmware, such as the up and down arrows, not a big deal. They're backwards. The Bluetooth software doesn't even work on 2 of my phones or a tablet. That's one of the huge appeals about buying this radio, and then it doesn't even work. And that could be fixed as well. You get into things like the mic gain. The mic gain is 100% a necessity. You need to fix the mic gain. And I mean, we can go on. The computer software was kind of buggy. I mentioned the Excel spreadsheet doesn't get bigger when you expand it, and it's hard to read. But more importantly, there's like this issue where it doesn't like to read the COM port all the time. Kind of a bummer. And the cable that I was sent, it wasn't necessarily supported with Windows 11, although there was a workaround for it. Those are the things that doesn't make this a $100 radio or a $59 radio. Not to mention, it's, as I could tell, not FCC certified, and I don't see any kind of applications for an FCC ID. And then we go into the test. I'm going to retest the battery here in a second. I'll append it to the end of the video. I didn't append it to the end of the video because I actually just put it in the video, 2,500 milliamp hours and 18 or so watt hours, right? But if I did the spectrum purity test correctly, this thing didn't look great on the spectrum. Now, yeah, it did 10 watts, great. But also in the firmware, don't forget to fix that 0.06 watts on VHF or UHF low power. I try to do a job here, and I try to do my best to get the information out when I can and show some of the good things and some of the bad. And, at this point, I think you've seen it all. I think it speaks for you. Probably the tone of my voice, I'm really tired. But TID Radios also has a reputation with their Bluetooth programming software. Last year, they asked me to, if they would send me a Bluetooth programmer and I could make a video on it. And I said no. And the reason I said no was when I looked at the software, not only do you download the software, but all of a sudden there's like this social media site and you have to sign up for the social media site. I think give them your phone number and your email address. And I'm like, I'm not all about that. I don't want them having my information, no matter how convenient it is to program a radio. And then on top of that, when I get the first firmware fix and my computer, even if it's a false detection, detects a virus in the firmware, you start wondering, and it's like, okay, what's going on here, right? So I say all that in the sense that now I get this radio and they say it's FCC certified, but it's not even, as far as I could tell, in an application process. Makes you kind of wonder about these things, right? And if I'm wondering about these things, what else am I going to wonder about? Quality of customer support. Is there customer support? What fast ones are they going to pull on us next? Buy it if you want it. If you don't, great. Let me know if you did like it. Maybe I just got a bad unit. But I do believe I provided valuable feedback to TID Radios, who I do also want to thank, though, for sending me this radio, although I will tell you right now that I don't want another radio from you. I'm Ham Radio Dude. I hope you have a good one wherever you are. 73.